Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Long time no see. If you're new here, hi, I'm Justice, and I love to talk about horror movies. And today I wanted to change it up a little bit from stuff I would normally talk about on this channel. And I wanted to talk about one of my all-time favorite shows currently, Disventure Camp. And for my viewers that watch the channel who don't know what Disventure Camp is, it is a cartoon comedy series that is a parody of shows like Survivor and was directly inspired by previous cartoons such as Total Drama, which is a show that I'm massively nostalgic for and one of my go-to comfort shows. So this show perfectly lines up into that category. And to keep with the theme of my channel, because at the end of the day I am a horror movie review channel through and through, we are going to be talking about all of the horror themed episodes of Disventure Camp and what I think of them, and I'm going to rank them from worst to best. One thing I want to note before getting into this list and diving into my overall thoughts on the show is that I'm not going to talk about the beta because honestly they would be right at the bottom of the list. I am not a big fan of the beta seasons. I don't even remember if there's a horror themed episode in the first season's beta, and I can already tell you the horror themed episode in season 2's beta would be right at the bottom. I just can't hang with all the bad mics. It really throws off the whole story, and the characters are just so damn flat in that beta version. But if you haven't seen Disventure Camp and you're just hearing me rambling and you don't know what I'm talking about, then this might not be the video for you, because this video is going to be filled with a lot, and I mean a lot of spoilers. But anyways, with that all out of the way, let's dive right into this ranking. Now, first up on this list is going to be Staff Stories, one of two spin-offs in the Disventure Camp universe. Now, Staff Stories Episode 3, The Promised Doll, is supposed to be a backstory on Nina and her origins and how Marcus has gotten her, and honestly, I thought this was going to be one of my favorite episodes of the series. When it was first announced, I was really excited because I think Nina is a really funny character. I know a lot of people really don't like her, but she always cracks me up, and I am always hungry for some more Nina lore, honestly, and any screen time that she gets is very welcome to me. This episode was not it, though, because even though this episode promised to be a backstory for Nina, it more or less wound up just being a backdoor pilot for the 3 paranormal investigators that were in this episode. It's not a bad episode by any means, it's just very cliche, and really these new characters that we're getting introduced to are mostly just fighting with each other, so I don't really have any interests in them there. It just kind of makes the whole thing fall flat for me, honestly. The biggest complaint I have about it being a backdoor pilot is if I would have gone into this episode knowing that, I may have been less frustrated about the whole thing. Heck, I wouldn't even mind seeing more episodes of this to see if maybe they were on to something. Like maybe they could release like a yearly Halloween episode that follows this groups of characters, because what we got here wasn't good, but their character designs are really fun. I don't remember the name of the characters, but I very much love the design of the blonde girl. She just screamed of that early 2000s nostalgia, and I just loved that. And I have to admit that young Marcus is kind of zaddy, so I wouldn't mind seeing him running around some more in like these imaginary episodes that we're probably not gonna get. But what we do have is a fairly lackluster, sad excuse of a backstory for Nina and Marcus getting paired up, because they are just the afterthought of this episode, and that's the exact reason why it is at the bottom of this list. Season 1, Episode 9's Don't Open Campers Inside is next up on the list. This is the first episode that introduces the VR technology, which becomes a running theme in future challenges in later seasons. It's honestly a theme that I very much enjoy seeing in those later seasons, like the superhero challenge in All Stars or even the Dungeons and Dragons challenge in Carnival of Chaos are some of my favorite episodes of the season. With as low as this one's placing, I think you guys can guess that this one is not my favorite. There are elements of it that I do think are really fun. I think that out of all of the horror-themed episodes that we've had on Disventure Camp, that this one is the one that decides to be the most disturbing and go for the more shocking elements. I mean, you literally see one of the characters get their arm cut off. None of the other horror-themed episodes take it up to that gruesome of a level, and that is really exciting for me to see because, again, I'm a horror hound. I love seeing that stuff, and in those moments I do have a lot of fun with it. Where I don't have a lot of fun with this episode, though, is a lot of the writing choices. Overall, season 1 is one of the strongest seasons in the series, but this episode very much weakens that because you have them going into this VR world, but not realizing that they're in a VR world. They think they're surviving an actual zombie apocalypse the entire episode, and they think that they've been in this world for months trying to survive the undead, watching their friends and loved ones die right in front of them, only for them to wake up from the VR headsets and realize, oh, none of that happened, so no trauma attached at all, which makes no sense. I mean, if you were in the middle of that situation, yeah, it was only a few hours with the headsets on. It felt like months to those dudes, and it's just stupid. There's no other way to put that. It's stupid, because why would you even finish the show at that point? You'd be too traumatized too, honestly. And then another thing that is frustrating about this episode is the elimination. Gret is one of my favorite characters, and I don't have a problem with her leaving this episode, but what I do have a problem with is the way that it was handled. It's this whole storyline about how her parents don't care about her, and it takes Fiore, a child, to tell her that her parents are never going to care about her, for her to be able to accept that in one episode and then immediately be okay with getting eliminated by the end. Just none of it's very fleshed out, and it really shows with the fact that this episode is less than 20 minutes long. It is very much to the detriment of the entire plot, and I know I'm probably ragging on this one way more than I was the previous episode. I do enjoy this one more than the Staff Stories horror installment, but there is just some really big glaring problems with this episode. But thankfully, the next one I have to talk about, I feel less negatively about, and that one would be Season 4, Episode 19's Thief in the Night. This is one of 2 episodes in Carnival of Chaos that are horror-themed episodes. I suppose they were just playing catch-up for All Stars not having a horror-themed episode. One of the biggest mistakes of many of All Stars' problems was not having the scary episode, because, come on, those are usually the best one, guys. Thief in the Night, though, is very much inspired by such franchises like Five Nights at Freddy's, and I do have a lot of fun with it. You have all of our campers running around in the woods trying to avoid this giant clown animatronic. It's a really fun episode. Where it lacks for me, though, is a lot of the drama in it is very lackluster and kind of nothing. I'm not a big fan of the Logan subplot this episode of him fighting with Anastasia and the girls, but where this episode does really shine for me is that elimination is just chef's kiss. It is one of the best eliminations in Carnival of Chaos. It's one of the more fun eliminations in the entire series. You have our nun, Isabel, who finds out that the votes are getting geared towards her, so she plays her immunity idol and is able to gear the votes towards Anastasia and Marissa, our Yuri couple of the season, and creates a tie where these two lovers are going to have to do a tiebreaker against each other. It's a really fun scene, and it gives a lot of character growth to Anastasia, in my opinion. The same can't be said about Marissa, but that's besides the point. I don't think this season was meant for her. I think this season was meant to showcase Anastasia, and I think they did a really good job with it. With a cast this big, you're always going to have characters that fall to the wayside, and you're not going to be able to fully develop. But to use that to propel and gear Anastasia's story forward in the season, I thought it was a really good choice, and it was a scene that very much stood out to me in the season. So that's the main reason why this episode lands at the middle of the list, since the horror elements aren't my favorite, and like I said, subplots can be a little subpar. The elimination is iconic, to say the least. And I suppose it's only fitting to have Season 4, Episode 15's Fright Night up next on the list. And this is our Haunted House episode of the season. It is another episode from Carnival of Chaos. This episode is a very fun filler episode for the most part. The elimination here just kind of makes sense. You have Richard, who has just kind of been floating along in the game. He isn't a bad character by any means, but he very much isn't a main character. So it made sense for him to dip out at this point in the season. Regardless of it being a filler episode, it is a lot of fun seeing them go through this haunted house and seeing like all these different kooky and creepy rooms that they're going into. And this is a Logan subplot episode that I actually do really enjoy, when you have the shared kiss between him and Spencer. Like, honestly, him and Spencer deserve to be together. I don't care what anyone says. Mathlete forever, I say anyways, but that's besides the point. You have some other fun things too, where they did a little callback to the dolls from the episode of Staff Stories, the Promise doll that I talked about earlier, and I actually really enjoyed what they did with that. I love when they do little callbacks so that you're reminded that they really care about the universe and want to keep everything connected and cohesive with each other, especially in this series, since a lot of seasons they'll bring in new cast members more so than other shows like Total Drama ever did. And some really big standouts this episode was Spencer and how cutthroat he was during the challenges. One of the more iconic and fun scenes of the season is him having a literal knife fight with Isabel, our nun. And honestly, I feel like that's some serious bad juju to be holding a knife to a nun. But hey, like, I'm not religious, so maybe I shouldn't be the one to cast stones, I guess. All of these reasons are what makes it the second best episode for me for these horror-themed episodes. And it very much sits comfortably at number 2 on this list, but coming in at number 1, and I feel like if you guys have seen it, it's probably no surprise that I have it here, is Season 2, Episode 8's Nightmare at Tippasquah. This episode is the slasher-themed episode, and it has all the elements I love to see. They just came out with this episode recently. It's a remake of that beta episode I was talking about earlier, and I wasn't a big fan of the beta, if you couldn't have gathered that from me saying I wasn't going to rank it. What this remake accomplishes, though, that the beta didn't, is giving the characters actual depth and making them way more fun. I love so many of the scenes in this. There are so many references to horror franchises, and also it's all wrapped up with Nina being essentially Jigsaw when she takes over the challenge, and she ultimately sicks a psycho killer on the group of campers. It's really fun to see. They include so many callbacks and homages to some of the biggest classic horror films. I mean, you literally have Hunter in the shower, which is a direct callback to Marion Crane getting slaughtered in Psycho. What more could you ask for? And then on top of it, too, you have a whole bunch of other little fun homages. You have Lake getting pulled into the water when she's on the boat, which is a recreation of Jason at the end of the movie's jump scare for the first Friday the 13th. You have callbacks to The Shining. Just this whole episode is just filled with so many fun little moments. I love the back and forth between James and the killer, which is a given since Scream is one of my all-time favorite horror movie franchises. Anyone who disagrees, you can kindly bite me and disagree in the comments below, I suppose. But everything about this episode made it extremely rewatchable and fun for me. And to top it off, too, you have one of the biggest game-changing eliminations this episode, with Rhea going behind both Lake and Rosa's back, who are supposed to be her best friends and biggest allies in the season, giving us one of the most iconic game changers of the entire season as Rhea goes into her full-on girl boss villain mode. The way that her villain arc is handled here is beautifully executed, and I think that she is a total baddie and an icon, and I wish that we could have kept that energy for her in All Stars, because the shtick becomes a little old, but here in this season, because that's what we're focusing on, and this episode, it works perfectly, and I love it. It's one that's really easy to rewatch and go back to, and honestly, that's why it's at the top of this list. But anyways, I just wanted an excuse to talk about Disventure Camp on the channel because, like I said at the beginning, it is one of my all-time favorite shows right now. And in the future, I may do an episode where I rank all of the total drama horror-themed episodes. So if you guys would be interested in that, you should let me know down in the comments below because I wouldn't mind talking about that if you guys want to hear about it. But with that all out of the way, if you guys want more content in the future just like this, then I would love if you click that subscribe button. I cover everything and anything horror on this channel, and you guys should drop your ranking down below for what your favorite Disventure Camp horror episodes were. I would love to see it. Just remember, my list is my list, and it's just my opinion. It's not the right one, so I would love to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. But with that all out of the way, this has been Justice, and I really hope to see you guys on the next one.